You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Hey, Jeepers. Welcome to On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I'm Kevin, the engineer, the guy who reads the instructions, uses the right tool, and generally follows those instructions.
And I'm Scott. I'm the slapstick parts guy. I continue a mission to try and remember the intros and outros of this show. Some year, blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah.
that'll work.
That too.
That'll work.
Into this, I can't even speak anymore. So with that, while we will always share what works for us,
As well as what didn't.
please make sure to take your time, do your research, read the instructions, find the instructions, and what was I supposed to say again there, Kevin?
The very first one. Choose what you want to do to your Jeep, not what everybody else is doing to theirs.
It's going to be a good show because I flubbed the intro.
Absolutely, it always is. So, folks, the show after Jeep Beach leaves us with an awesome couple of guests.
Absolutely.
So I'm really excited here. I'm sure many of you absolutely know when I say beadlocks. Okay,
Yes.
and a lot of you run beadlocks on your Jeeps for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how about the people who came up with the concept? We have them here, courtesy of our roving product ambassador, however you want to call it, Stacy Lynn Smith of Southern as Sweet Tea. Check out her website. Check out her Facebook page. Check out her
Instagrams.
videos, her Instagram, her yeah.
Nice.
Along with Lilo, the roving munchkin mutt, who's sitting in her lap. So if you hear occasional bonks and wiggles on Stacy's microphone, Patreons get to see this cute little dog with the pink bow on her head.
Absolutely.
But most important, we've got a guest here. We have Greg Mulkey of Raceline. He's been with Raceline pretty much since they decided to get out of trailers. Or they're still doing trailers, aren't they,
Oh,
Greg?
yeah, absolutely. Big time.
And Greg is one of the ones who was instrumental in the creation of the beadlock. So what an opportunity we have here to talk about Raceline wheels, to talk about beadlocks in general, and then a little later on, we're going to talk a little bit about tech tips on, I guess,
Beadlock wheels.
beadlock wheels.
Mm-hmm.
So, Greg, welcome to On the Trail with Kevin and Scott.
Hey, it's great to be here with you boys.
Oh, this
Thanks.
is awesome. And last thing for our Patreons, we have an almost real studio audience.
Oh, yeah.
He's a little far back there, but
Where's the applause?
there
There's
we
the
go.
applause sign.
He's
The applause sign does work.
So-
exactly. He's holding the line.
Yeah. Oh, bad, Scott. So, Greg, since we got a real quick jump on it, but to me, it's just an exciting topic that we're sitting here. I have to admit, I'm one of those poor people who have mock beadlock wheels. But someday,
Simulated, it's not bad.
yeah,
It's not. Not at
but I also don't run at 2 psi like some people do. So
Well, it's amazing that a lot of people that think they need beadlocks really don't.
Yeah.
And that's coming from a guy who's made a living selling beadlocks. So
Yeah.
a little bit strange, but we can kind of get into some of that in the technical aspect of it a little bit later and kind of explain the difference.
all right. Well, why don't you, the whole concept of beadlock, securing the tire on the wheel, I can remember, unfortunately, it tells you how old I am, when beadlocks were something new. Okay. And before that, I remember, I think it was the old four-wheeler magazine came out, and they were talking about the racers out in the Midwest who were running low tire pressure and were literally, when they mounted the tires, driving screws through the rim into the bead and hoping that they didn't leak. And then along came this neat invention, of rims that you could unbolt and put your tire on and tighten it up. So why don't you talk a little bit about how the heck did you come up with that idea?
Well, it goes back a ways. Like at 14, I went to my first dirt track race and met a man named Lyle Marsh, who was Marsh Racing Tires, which at that time was the single biggest recapping tire company in the country. But he loved racing, so he was always looking in the gray area because he wasn't a race car driver, but he liked to make them fast. So from recap tires, we started putting soft rubber on the tires, which hooked them up on the dirt tracks. And when we started really hooking them up on the dirt tracks, they started ripping the tires off.
Yeah,
because
spinning
they were
right
all
off the
turning
rim.
left and right. The screws and all the Gorilla snot glue and all that stuff kind of comes from the drag racing because they in a lot of classes, they don't allow to be locked, so the guys would screw them.
Yep.
But in off-road racing, that lasts maybe the first rock, and then you rip it out. And then your tires rent, and you're right back to the same thing. So, during the evolution of the dirt track and then the soft tires, we had to develop something to put the tire on the wheel and make it where it wouldn't come off. And so the owner come down and challenged us all one day to figure something out. And so a gentleman named Jensen, he was the one that came up with what you see today, which is a external bolt-on bead lock that you're actually smashing the bead of the tire between two outer rings to protect that soft shell lip that's on the wheel. And that's why we had to do a bead lock, because when you look at a rim shell, it'll have a big bell on the back side, and it'll have a little bell on the front side with a valley in the middle of it. And the valley is so you can slip that 15-inch tire over that 17-inch OD.
Gotcha. So that
down
it
in that
has a little
valley and
stretch
over.
and pop. Yeah.
So what would happen with that little valley on the outside of that wheel where your valve stem is,
Yep.
you'd only have to push the tire inch and a half, and you'd pop it into the valley, and you would lose air pressure. And that's where it really came noticeable. And the guys would hang in left, would dig the right rear wheel into the ground and take a ride.
Pow.
And so my invention was I welded nuts on the inside of the wheel where the valve stem is about every 6 inches, and then ran a bolt with silicone down behind it.
Okay.
And that was the bead lock I came up. But Mr. Jensen, he come up with what we see today, and gosh, did it take off. I mean, everybody, back then it was more of the deer woods and stuff like that we were playing in the dirt tracks. And then when we started developing into the off-road four-wheel drives, it really made a big difference. And of course, we had to make everything heavy duty because the vehicles were twice as heavy, and we're going over rocks instead of dirt.
Yeah.
So
you
the evolution,
weren't just looking at peeling the tire off; you were looking at actually beating it off. So
that's exactly right. And what would happen to normal rims is they would end up beating the outside rim lip so bad that it would even keep the tire, or it would cut the tire when the tire would lay over it.
Right.
And so the bead lock helps a lot of things and help in that manner, but it is a performance product, and so it does have to be maintained. And so, so that was in 1979.
Wow.
So that's a lot of years ago. And so it jumped on pretty quick, and the guys on the West Coast picked up pretty quick. And, before long, we were putting bead locks on Mickey Thompson's, all of seniors' wheels, and racing in Baja, and then short track and short course. And it's developed. And so in about 2000, I resigned from Marsh and went to work for Raceline.
Okay.
At that time, Raceline was Allied Wheel.
Okay.
That is the parent existing company that owns it all. And it's a family-owned business, one of the last family-owned wheel businesses in the country. And at that time, trailer tires and wheels was it. And they would roll raw material in one end of the factory and box powder coat wheels out the other.
Oh, I love those kind of processes.
Big time. Me coming from a small town and having to work everything in your mind and not have all that. It was a kid in a candy store. I was overwhelmed for the first few days, and through changes and stuff we went through, we into the dirt track and still kind of lingered into the four-wheel drive, and then turned our total focus into the four-wheel drive business, and then developed our Rockathon series into our cast series that you see today that are everywhere. The Monster has been a pretty popular wheel, and so we accomplished a lot of things quick and have been rolling on it for about 15 years, and we're developing new stuff now. New forged wheels. It's an ongoing thing. And the cool thing about it is that what we learn in the racetrack, we bring it over into the, as you said earlier, the simulated bead lock stuff, which I'm going to go ahead and talk about a little bit, because a simulated bead lock that we build, because we build it, and it's not a DOT spec completely wheel, we can kind of fudge on some of it, not much like a rim line that rolls rims,
Right.
set at a certain spec, and you can't really mess with it too much.
Right.
But in castings, you're casting into a die, and then you can machine it to an exact tolerance. And so we push those tolerances quite a bit on those. Plus, they have the extra thick rim lips so that you can go off-road.
Gotcha.
So we've kind of tried to cross as many things as we can so that any off-roader can get what they need and go.
Yeah, they're awesome to watch, not just for holding on to tires too, but like you're talking about the what do you call the outer lock ring?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the lock ring also helps to protect valve stems by deflecting the impact when you do slide up against something or spin against a rock. it gets beat up. And I noticed that I checked your website out this morning before the interview that you guys sell replacement lock rings for people who do those kinds of things.
Oh, absolutely. We sell all the parts. It's nice that we don't have to replace too many parts, but like with our valve stems, all our valve stems are located back into the center section so that
Deeper in.
it really has to be something gnarly to get in there and take them out. So
Kind of like Dory going up the mountainside in Georgia, and when she got to the top of the hill, there was no rim. You couldn't see anything but a smooth mud disc.
I can hear the listeners clicking on order now, going challenge accepted.
Yeah, that's one thing. A lot of our listeners do tend to be somewhat hardcore, even on Jeeps.
oh gosh.
But no, that's fascinating. And have you guys ever found a need to do double beadlock and inside
absolutely.
and outside?
Oh yeah, we currently build them now, and for the most part, double beadlocks, because if you're running like a 17-inch wheel, will not fit over the back beadlock.
Gotcha.
The back ring will not fit over the brakes.
Right, you have to do a custom.
So you have to go to a 20-inch wheel.
Oof.
Because the 17s, the brakes have gotten so big on the cars nowadays that you can't fit over. But it's really not an advantage for a street guy or a weekend guy. Where the double beadlock comes into effect is competition.
Right.
And so a guy in competition, say he's in the desert, racing across the desert, and he punches a hole in that tire. As long as the beads stay in the bead position on the wheel,
he can continue to
he
push
can
on.
hammer that throttle, and that tire will go to heaven and hell, and he can keep on cruising.
Yep. And I've seen that. The difference between making it to a checkpoint where your pit truck is and then trying to have them come find you out on the track,
Or you change it yourself.
or changing it yourself, can make or break your lap times, and you can win or lose a race.
No doubt about it. And so a lot of guys want to get back to the pits. And so the double beadlock helps them. And as long as the tire stays out on those bead surfaces where it's meant to be, the tire under acceleration will stand up and go. I've had guys in the desert come back into the pits on our wheel only with 2 beads of the tire with a little bit of sidewall.
Yeah.
That's it.
Like 2 little pizza cutters.
That's exactly
But they
right.
made it.
And so
But
They made it.
I've seen them do this. And so, it's a lot of important stuff goes into making wheels. It's like a lot of people ask me the question, well, what's the difference between forged and cast?
Okay.
Now,
You want to ask that? Because I know the difference, but I think some of our
Do you
listeners
really?
may want to know.
I think he literally just asked the question.
That's fine, yeah.
I think, well, in the old days, castings were done by mixing the material up in an auger and a deal, and it would fall down into a die.
Right, and it would entrain air and gases.
You
and
could break the part apart, and it looked like best way to explain it with 80 grit sandpaper.
I was
It
gonna
looked
say,
like sand stacked up
wet
with air.
sand when you break it
Yeah.
apart. Yep.
And so nowadays they use a low pressure cast machine, which it heats the material up below it. It has the matrix setting on top of it, and it actually uses vacuum, high vacuum, and it sucks that up in there. And now when you take that part and you break it apart, it looks like 180 grit sandpaper.
Right, much
Well,
smaller grain
If
structure.
you broke a forged apart, you'd be looking at 220.
And that looks even more like breaking apart rope. You're fibrous almost in the material.
Well, with the forgings, the biggest thing about a forging and that type of material is that it has a little more lacticity than cast, because we're at a different temperature and a different compression of it being made. A forge is made underneath extreme pressure. I mean, you got a 20 or 30 ton press over the top of you, smashing down on that thing.
And you can even go further. There's what they call slow forged and fast forged.
Absolutely.
And slow forged is where it's
form.
just squeezed continuously, and then the fast ones, when you see those big hammers that come down,
Right.
boom, and the material does different things under those conditions, and it's not one's better than the other. That's the neat thing. There are instances where uniform grain over vacuum casting is stronger, and then there's other installations where hammer forged is stronger, and it all depends on what you're doing to that piece of metal.
What's the difference between a grade 3 bolt and a grade 8 bolt?
Yep.
It depends on what you're going to use it for.
Yep.
So
That's awesome. Yeah, if you need a little give, the grade 3 is actually better than the grade 8. If the part doesn't have any flex in it, you don't want the bolt to be so rigid that everything shatters.
Well, and that's why if you go more than a grade 8 bolt on a tire beadlock, and what people don't realize is as that tire and wheel assembly rolls around and puts the load of the vehicle onto the front of the wheel on the beadlock, it undulates.
Yep.
And you can't see it, but every tire and wheel undulates. But underneath a beadlock, the outer ring undulates. And what happens is that wears on the bolts, and you can't move it on a bolt. If you put like a grade 10 or a stainless steel in there, that bolt is made for solid lockup and no movement. Otherwise, it just shears off.
So do you hear that, Ron? You kept breaking your beadlock bolts. Stronger isn't always better.
Just like lower air pressure isn't always better, and that's a big thing that people tell me too. They go, well, why? How do you pick the right air pressure? And I said, well, there's an array of ways to look at that. And the way I always tell them, I said, when you get your wheel and your tire assembly, go pick on a rock.
Yep.
Go out to that rock at 32 PSI, have somebody drive your Jeep up on that little rock and watch how that tire conforms to that rock. Now drop that air pressure to 6 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're going to find out real quick is that at really low air pressure, the tire just wads up in front of the wheel. And so you're just kind of like trying to roll around on a bunch of rubber balls. And so it won't hook up on the rock and roll over. Mm-hmm. It's almost like easier to explain it like, have you ever pushed a car that had 4 flat tires?
Yeah.
Right. So can you imagine pushing a flat tire up over a rock?
Yeah.
And how much that takes? But
Yet,
if
you
get
get it,
the right air pressure,
it'll just wrap on it, but it'll support the Jeep
that's
over
exactly right. And so I tell them, go out and practice on a rock. Do
Yep.
it on the front, do it on the rear, and you'll be amazed what you can learn right there. And then when you get out on the trail, you'll have that kind of feel, and you'll know where you're at.
Yep. And you'll see that if you're going up on a rock too high a pressure, you'll have tread that's floating in air. You'll have a pressure point in the middle or on the edge or somewhere, and you're wasting tread. Is the way I usually tell folks. Let it down until it just conforms, but don't put it all the way down to where the sidewall's touching. Okay? And you'll get an idea of what you're working with. Also, if you underinflate, and correct me if I'm wrong, most tires actually puncture easier at a lower pressure than high.
Pinch the sidewalls.
Yeah, because you're putting something that's not designed for that load to carry load. The sidewalls are to hold in air and act as a sidewall, not as a tread pattern. So it's kind of neat.
Spring rate.
Yep.
So, the problem with people too also is they think that the wider wheel is better. Wider is only better if you're trying to get like a little more flotation.
Yeah, like balloon.
Mud.
Okay,
Absolutely.
A narrow wheel is much better off road, and if you have a chamber where the bead of the tire kind of curves back around. So what happens at lower air pressure, the sidewall of the tire will roll around the edge of the wheel.
Right.
Whereas if you got a really wide wheel, you think about it. I always like to stand the tire up where I can roll across the floor, and I stick my tape measure in there, and I measure the natural set of that tire.
Okay.
And then you know that if you widen that out, and then you lower the air pressure, what does that tire want to do? It wants to go back to that natural set. So if it's set at 8 inches, and you blow it out to 12 inches, when it lowers down to air pressure, it wants to return to 8. You put it on 7, it wants to go back out to 8. You stay it right at 8, it has very little flex. When you get the wheel so wide, the sidewall has no more ability to roll around the wheel anymore. And so the sidewall folds, and you smash it against the rock, and you pinch the sidewall
And
out.
it's cut. And once
You look
it's
like
cut,
you took a knife and stuck in there and just sliced it right down. So, that's air pressure and that's wheel size. So that's 2 pretty things to think about when you get ready to go wheeling.
Well, that's like Kevin and I constantly preach is practice, seat time, and learning. So that right there covers all 3 of those. Learn what works for you and take that time because, like you said, if you don't, you can cost yourself a little bit of money in a new tire.
Yeah, I know. A long day out somewhere where there ain't no grocery store. You can get something cold to drink.
Amen to that. Yeah, I've fought that battle with people. Like my favorite one, and I've said it before on the show, is that even street pressure, you should probably take. I like children's playground chalk. Mark the tire, do a couple revs, and look where you rub the chalk off. And I will tell you, most people on wider tires are floating on the middle third of that tire and not using the outer edges.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's like, lower the pressure. But the door says, I know the door says, the door's tire pressure recommendations are for the factory tires.
Exactly.
On the highway.
On the highway. Exactly. And you're not, I run, like in my Jeep, I get almost perfect tire contact in a 12.5-inch wide tire, but it has to be down around 28.
Yeah.
Now, that's not really low, but it's amazing what 4 PSI to 32 does.
Hey.
She balls up into a donut, and I'm running on 2 ribs in the middle.
There you go.
And I hydroplane like crazy. So, no, it's awesome. So, what kind of new things do you guys have that you can share with us coming out?
Well, like I say, we started into building the forged again. Everything is, for my taste, has gone too much overseas in production. And so a lot of the wheel companies and stuff, they produce everything overseas now. So R&D is a little bit more difficult. Now, the forged stuff I'm still having quite a bit of fun with like the forged double B-lock and the 20-inch wheel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people don't realize that when you look at a tire and it has a tire load rating on it, and you look at a wheel and it has a load rating on it,
Mm-hmm.
that wheel and tire was tested to an OEM load rating, which is 31, 32-inch tall tire max on about anything OEM.
Right.
So we go out and we immediately stick 35s and 37s and all the way up to 43s. And I think she just put 43s on her rig.
Yep. I
So-
helped put them on. I know.
What people don't realize that is that for about every inch that you go up, you lose a percentage of your load rating.
Yes.
And so when we start getting up in these 20-inch wheels, it's like the wheel that she runs on her Jeep currently now, which is the RT260 20-inch Avenger. It was tested to a 49-inch tall tire. I mean, we had to build a whole new process to be able to test to that because most of the factories that test are to a DOT and their max is 35 inches.
Right.
Some are 37 now. But you go outside, you go to one of these shows, there's a lot bigger tires running around.
Oh, there's some incredible tires out there.
And so the 20-inch, when we built it, it was built to be heavy duty, not only in the cast version, but in the forged double B-lock version, which gives a person an ability to adjust the backspace.
Gotcha.
And so we build a lot of custom wheels for buggies and stuff that are putting like the Rockwell 2-ton axles in it. And now
Yep.
they're going to the Axle Tech 10 lug.
Yep.
And so that wheel was kind of fitting those guys up really well and giving them a heavy duty. So we're kind of working toward that way because the whole market's going bigger and bigger and bigger. I can remember when I came into the market into California. I mean, we were like amazed at 35-inch tall tires.
Oh, I
That's
still
21
remember
years ago.
guys getting absolutely freaked out putting an
So-
H series tire on a Toyota pickup truck, and it looked like a monster.
Well, it isn't something that Kenny just said. It's like every Jeep's become a monster now.
Yeah, that's
It's
to be
almost
the
like
focus.
the backwards. Like Kevin and I, we run 33s on our TJs, and of course, what we get a lot of, why don't you run 35s? Well, I like survivability.
Yeah.
Well, and I also look at it, quite frankly, what's the difference between a 12.5 35 and a 12.5 33 as far as ground contact? Nothing.
Not much.
Not much of anything. And yet the torque loading a 35 puts on your axles and drivetrain versus a 33 is significantly higher. I did the math.
Maybe what, 20 pounds? 15 pounds?
I'm talking about actual
Rotational
the
first.
rotational torque.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
At least, and that's could be the difference between snapping a U joint and not. The only place that tire diameter makes a difference is center ground clearance and pumpkin clearance. And that's only if you're crazy enough to straddle the high spot. I studied, and this is just me, way back when, about the time your beadlock came in, I was into Jeeping pretty hard at that point, and I was taught by a very good guy who said, you see the high spot? If it isn't going to flip your Jeep, put your tire on it, and then you don't have to worry about it. Don't go over it, go on it. Now, obviously, if you're the choice to go on, it's going to flip you over. Yeah, you may choose a different line, as we've discussed on your show. Choose your line. But
Maybe
I
don't
have
go quite as high on it.
right, but the key is that if an obstruction is under your tire, it's probably not going to high center your Jeep.
Well, and I always tell everybody, I go, look, if you're not running trails where you're putting the rear tires or the front tires over the height of the other tire, you don't have to get real drastic.
No.
And they're not, and until you start getting there and you start worrying about scratches,
Yeah.
then that's where you start considering the beadlocks.
Yeah.
And up to that point, I think most people can survive about any trail they want without beadlock. I mean, my rig that I drive daily and do the Rubicon Trail and all the trails on the West Coast, it does not have beadlocks on it. And the reason is because of the point you just made about rotating mass.
Yep.
So in the dirt track days, we were all trying to figure out, because they were gun drilling their axles and everything to remove weight.
Right.
And we wanted to figure out what this calculation was. And so we went to a chassis dyno and put a car up on the chassis dyno and locked it down and put the same tire on a set of wheels without a beadlock and the same tires on a set of wheels with a beadlock.
Beadlock. So you had
And
greater
stuck 'em up
rotating
on the
mass.
chassis dyno.
Yep.
And so after several hours of running around with it, we come to this conclusion that it was about a 10-to-1 ratio.
Wow. Wow.
So for every
That's a lot of
pound
math.
weight, for every pound of weight you put on your axle, the car thinks it's 10 pounds heavier as far as
Acceleration.
accelerating, braking, and turning.
Amazing.
So you know, the guys going to the bigger tires, like you were just talking, going from a 33 to a 35. Well, you probably just added 40 pounds of unsprung weight.
Yep.
Well, the Jeep came with a 30, like a lot of the old Jeeps did.
Yep.
You're going to have to be careful.
Yeah,
you
you
don't
do.
want to spin or bounce.
Yeah.
But, you know, you jump into a JK, and then you jump all the way up into these new JLs and everything. Gosh, they are so built so bad that the guys are putting 39s right out on the wheels and going and getting on it. It's just the whole evolution of Jeeps in the last
10 years.
The JK.
Yeah,
When the
2007.
JK came out, the market started booming. Everybody started building aftermarket parts because everybody had to have a Jeep. Now you look at these JLs and these Gladiators, you got to stand in line.
Yep.
And the amount of product that you can buy and bolt on nowadays is just, I've never seen anything like it. And I've been in the automotive industry all my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
serious
amazing.
business.
Well,
Pay
it is.
attention.
and that's the thing where Kevin and I talk about bench building and being honest with yourself. Like, you know, Stacy here, the trails that she's going to go to, yeah, her Jeep is going to be built for what she wants to do because she was honest with herself and honest with the build. I'm not there yet with my skills.
I don't want to be there anymore. I'm
So-
tired of breaking stuff and working on it.
And it's funny
Is that
'cause
right, Dave?
I just had a conversation with a coworker. Man, when are you going to fix all the dents and paint this? No.
Quit having fun, then.
I'm mild, okay, and I'm fine. And 33 is that nice sweet spot. You're talking about the stand in line. Well, my wife has the Gladiator Rubicon. Yeah. You know, she had her Rubicon 4-door that had 35s. You know, and that's
That
what
was her
everyone had.
JK.
That was her JK.
JKU.
So we're bench building her Gladiator now, and we've kind of decided, you know, because the axles are built so different than the new ones.
That's right.
And again, she's gonna be mild for right now. You know, eventually down the road is gonna be like a TJ Truggy or something like that for her.
I'll get in her ear a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, heaven.
Well, she still needs to get into it. So we're looking at 37s because 37s is the sweet spot for those axles.
There's no doubt.
But we're not going to do crazy stuff with it, so we kind of know it's
So
going to
you
be
say.
a little bit of a pavement princess. Oh no, we've had the talk. She wants an LJ.
Today, I agree. That's what you've said.
Yeah.
I've seen it. Yeah, I have to comment back to one of your comments about, you know, people worrying about scratches. The only thing I worry about scratches is if I come home without them. What did I do wrong?
Didn't play hard enough.
Oh, trust
Yeah,
me.
he
You
was
can
an
go to the
observer.
fenders on my TJ. I'm weird that way. I'll show you my Jeep later. But whereas everybody's cutting them off, I actually widen them. I went counter to most of the things people do. Everybody's jacking to the sky. I'm a mild 4-inch lift. You know. So the point is, though, you look at my fender flares, and they now look like trees, and you can count the number of times I've hit them by the growth rings, the white rings in the plastic.
I was a huge fan of stubby bumpers until I whacked a tree out in the property and going, you know, that could have been my fender.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep my wide bumper.
See, and that's I was showing him. He goes, everybody looks at me, and goes, why didn't you cut that bumper off? Why did you go full width? I said, because I had to hunt for that. ARB makes it, but it has to be imported from Australia because I hit things. I don't mean to, but, you know, we get into this discussion. When he had the JKU and the TJ, I'd be like, I'm going that way. And he goes, you can't fit. Yes, I can. Oop. Well, okay. I couldn't before, but I can now.
There's a little bit of bang, bang, crunch, bang, bang, bang.
So
Made it.
But, you know,
But narrow's not bad either because that gives a chance for your tire to grab an obstacle and actually get you through it.
my
Versus
tires are down
squeezing
there.
and cramming
My
through it.
tires are right down there. I can pull up on the tire. It's the bumper protects the sheet metal, and my tire where my bumper is, and it's not that wide. I'm not hanging out on the bumper,
Okay.
but if it was any narrower, you'd crunch sheet metal and miss the tire on the inside. So it's all in the bench build. What Scott was talking about be honest with yourself. How are you going to use your Jeep? If you're building a pavement princess, that's fine. I'll never quibble over folks that want to have the really pretty, you know, pavement princess and looks really cool, and that's great.
And take pride in their
And take pride in what you do with it. You know, as much as the guys cringe when I say this, you know, the Jeep is the ultimate Barbie doll for the off-roader. You can do with it what you want. You can buy any outfit, any accessory. You know, you can buy anything. You can make it your own. There's almost no other vehicle out there with that level of accessorization, for lack of a better word.
It's adult Legos.
It is. It really is.
Yes.
So, but back to the beadlock. This is just awesome. Now, obviously, I'm going to put this out here. I was surprised that you guys have offices in California, Arizona, Texas, and Washington State.
Yeah, and we're working for Salt Lake City, and then they're looking to put something back here in the
Eastern
in the
side?
East. That's why I've been back here and working so hard the last few years, is to establish our name and get companies. I mean, we're already sold by Discount Tires and
Oh, yeah.
four-wheel parts and the tire rack and all that already, but we haven't stretched our wings enough to get a warehouse back here on the East Coast because we're a LA-based company. And like I say, it is a family-owned company, so it's been a little bit slower in the expansion. But the last 2 years, we've covered some ground, and it's we're still looking to cover more.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, not to jump on your thing, but if they want to get a hold of you, find out information, pricing directly from Raceline,
Sure.
where you can buy your stuff, it's racelinewheels.com,
Yeah,
right?
info@racelinewheels.com.
Okay. Info. So it is, folks, Raceline Wheels. Don't just put Raceline. It's Raceline Wheels, all one word, .com is how you can get a hold of any of the information, plus go to their website. I did a tour on their website this morning. You're going to sit there and have a towel under you because you're going to drool all over your table as you look at all the different wheels, accessories, jewelry, you know, just you name it, they've got it there.
Yeah, we do. We build wheels for about everything. I mean, from the trucks and the SUVs, of course, and
Yep.
the off-road beadlock wheels, of course, but your son, your daughter's college car, we build wheels for.
Oh,
You know,
I have wheels on my airboat trailer.
and we build the boat and trailer wheels that we've done for years. So.
now that's interesting. And now this I've got to ask point blank: do you guys make trailer tires, or do you carry trailer tires?
Oh yeah, we probably sell 1 million a year.
Okay, and with the whole Scott and I both are RVers kind of people, and you know I actually was always in fear of Chinesium tires on the trailers because they were notorious for exploding, and of course if you have a $70,000 RV and the tire explodes and it wipes half of your siding and wheel well off. What tires do you guys recommend, or do you have good experience with?
We build trailer tires for the smaller trailers, not like for an RV and
Okay.
the big trailers like that. But it is made overseas, and they put a pretty big quality control. And I've never noticed problems. I mean, when you're in the business as long as Raceline has been, you're going to go through cycles.
Yeah,
And so,
right.
but for the norm, these companies and the products we're doing have been built and used for quite a while now, and we have really good success. I know the trailer tires that are on the trailer right now that I pull behind the van, they got at least 20 grand on them.
Wow. Okay, so there
The biggest
are
problem
good
with
trailers.
tires is air pressure. Yeah, people just, that's the last thing you go look at on your trailer is the tire pressure, and it doesn't take much. And what happens is as soon as you start building an excessive amount of heat in a tire, it's going to fail.
That's where
That's
it'll
the
come
number
apart.
one thing, and that's usually low air pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be a rub, but most of the time it's just low air pressure. And you can only be off 10 psi, but if you have a heavy load on the trailer and you're doing 1,000 miles, it's not going to work out well.
Yeah, no,
All right.
10 psi adds up quick, kind of like rotational force with a wheel adds up quick.
It adds up quick. So let's take a short break. Scott, you want to do our little midpoint?
Certainly.
And then we'll pick up in the garage because Greg had talked to us a few tech tips that he might want to share with us.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that would be awesome.
Cool, sounds good to me. Hello, everyone. As usual, it's time for our mid-show commercial break, but not really commercial. But with that note, don't forget to check out our Patreon page with all the really cool stuff. Like our Patreon viewers now get to see me do the game face as we try and do the videos exclusively to Patreons. Also, check out the 4x4 Radio Network, where we can hear all the really cool shows and other information. And with that, and also,
Well, we got to do one other one. And don't
Yes.
forget to check out Southern is Sweet Tea.
yes,
And watch her videos, and you can see a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about going on, including her JKU build that went to
Raceline one-ton build.
that went to Jeep Beach and dancing out on the beach. That was a nice shot that you got with the sun and set in the
Oh, yeah.
background. That was a
That was Forlow photography.
Forlow photography.
Scott.
So
He took
anyway,
What a big show that was, too. Wasn't that awesome? See
That was
everybody
a
get
nice
out and get their Jeeps out and
Oh, yeah.
wheel out there on the course. And
all the way up.
It was just
There was
good.
even a touch of horror. You know what it was?
what?
Watching the Jeeps drive through the salt water. I could
Ugh.
hear
Did
them
you-
rusting.
Oh, my gosh.
You go into the hotel parking lots and you could hear the crinkle of metal slowly crying and falling to the pavement.
It's like an old Toyota Corolla. On a quiet night, you could hear it rust. And also check out the Raceline website, racelinewheel.com and /info or something like that. But, if you Google Raceline wheels, you should be in the right wheelhouse. Get it? Right wheelhouse. Thank you very much. Boom shaka like a pun for the commercials. And with that, we're going to tip your tire back into the show. We hope you enjoy this. And with that, back to the show.
All right, Greg. So you talked about some tech side to the whole tires and beadlock side.
Yeah. Well, we kind of touched base a little bit on the difference between a cast and a forged wheel, and so customer will ask me, well, why would I? Everybody tells me I need to have a forged wheel, and after I explain to them the difference between the way cast was built in the old days and the way it's built in the new days, then you have the price consideration. And forgings is a lot bigger process, a lot more expensive material, and so it's more expensive wheel. And then you talk about weight. On a forged wheel versus other wheel, if it's pretty much configured in the same dimensions, is only nowadays is, I'm going to say at least less than 8 to 9%.
Okay.
It's way down there now. So the wheels are, all of them are averaging in the 30 to 36 pound range that we run on these Jeeps. Now we go up to some heavier wheels that are heavier load rated, but that is the difference. And so that's why cast wheels have taken on such a different phase, and you just see them everywhere now. And so very few forged wheels are actually used on the street anymore, unless it's a custom built something that we have to do special offsets or special bolt patterns. But everything in the cast has pretty much been covered through the plants. And the inventories are set. And so we can take care of about any vehicles. I mean, we do Land Rovers. We do just about anything that has 4 wheels on it. So, and then,
I've actually seen a couple of your wheels on 3 wheels.
Oh.
Yep.
Yeah, on the back end of trikes and other things like that. So
I'm over here thinking beadlock
Go-karts.
golf cart.
Oh, we do. Well, we didn't beadlock, but it looks like a beadlock.
Yeah.
Simulated.
What's a golf cart need a beadlock for? Of course, the way we drive them,
I was going to say,
You got the golf carts, the side by side.
Have you seen my wife drive?
Yeah.
She needs beadlocks.
Hence, she's going to continue that build.
yeah, we know that.
So yeah, there's a lot of great things, and like we were talking about the narrow wheels. It's I like the narrow wheels when I'm off-roading more. If you're interested in more mileage, I go to a little bit wider wheel to get that flatter surface so that you can rotate them and get a little more mileage out of. Most of us that have the Jeeps, we're not too worried about mileage. We're worried about getting out on the trail and having plenty of traction. So we run that narrower wheel, and you can get down a little bit lower air pressure. Like when I off-road, I doubt I ever get below 19. Because I hate when I drove wheel all day to get back up and drive down the road and have to get out and air everything up. I just get in and go.
It's like laziness is the mother of invention. You know what I mean?
Well, and I tell you what, I don't break much stuff that way.
Yeah.
Because you're not, you're not aired down and
Losing some of your lift, quite frankly.
Hand your beer to somebody and tell them to watch this.
Yeah.
I don't.
I don't do that either.
Well, your Jeep's built a little different than mine. Yours is probably going to take a little bit of that handing the beer off stuff. Mine won't. Even though I try.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like on the JK, we normally ran 27 psi.
Yeah.
And I would bring it down to 20 or 19. And everyone's like, "Why so low?" Because I can pump it back up really quick, and I can get back in the air conditioning.
The thing about it is, the tire manufacturers are going to go, "Oh, don't tell them that, Greg."
Yeah.
And they're going to want you to know that when you run below 30% of your air pressure, if you get below 30% of your air pressure, what the tire recommendation is, that you will build up heat in the tide wall, which we had talked about earlier, which destroys tire, is heat.
Yep.
And so they're going to tell you that you need to air it back up to at least in the mid-20s to
Right.
keep the sidewall from building up amount of heat, depending on how long you're going to drive it at that. Like,
Yeah.
If I feel like I'm going to drive it forever, I'll pull
Take the
in
time
and
and
take
air
the
it up.
COT tank out and put some air in it. But at 19 PSI and no more than I drive it, I hardly ever deal with it. And, with the beadlocks nowadays, we spend a lot of time and effort in, bead thicknesses is another big thing that I get questioned all the time about. And you would think DOT would have a regulation like they do us on wheels. And on wheels, they make us put a 1/2-inch bead. Well, a lot of beads of tires are 3/4 and 1 inch now, but they're still DOT. And how they do that and say that you can put it on a DOT wheel, I'm not sure. And which brings in a whole another bunch of
Because I'm
problems.
sitting there thinking that would sit there on the micro
It's
level.
like a teeter-totter.
It starts.
It's a teeter-totter.
As you
And
inflate
so
the
you'll
tire,
hear
it will
guys
pull it away.
complain. I hear this, psst,
Yep.
And that is that tire teeter-tottering on that bead, those thicker beaded tires.
Right.
And so it bleeps air, and it'll just keep bleeping air all day, drive you nuts because you'll get out to your little soap gun, you can't find no air leaking. But
Yeah, because it only
happened
happens
enough
as
now
you're
that people realize
rolling.
Right.
there's things you can do to fix that. I've seen them put sandpaper on them. I've seen them do all kinds of things.
Oh, I can see that. I've read about different tire sealants now. There's some shops that are absolutely, using the sealant immediately on a new install. I'm like, really? The only place that I'm used to seeing it in my day when I was doing tires was up in the north where salt corrosion and you were trying to buy a little more time out of a pitted rim. Yeah. Because nothing you could do was going to keep that tire sealed.
If they would just spray it with WD-40, they wouldn't have a problem.
Yep. Now that was something interesting when we were talking with Dominic at Mickey Thompson about tires, and one of the things he said, and I get your take on it from the rims perspective. Try that in English, Kevin. Is he said most tire shops, particularly when they're having balance problems, he finds out that they're basically mounting the tire and filling it till it pops and then stopping. But that they and everybody he knows of says, no, what you should do is you look at the maximum pressure on the tire, and that for seating the bead, you should inflate that tire on the tire inflator, up to, let's say it's a 35 PSI max tire. Run it to 35 and then air it down to what they want on the Jeep to make sure that you fully seat the bead and you'll have less balance issues. Mm-hmm. How do you see that?
I've not really experienced it too much, but I don't have a problem putting air in the tire to get it to blow out on the wheel.
Okay.
In the industry, 18 to 20 PSI is where they like that factory DOT tire to pop out on that wheel.
Okay.
I like to see it for off-roading in the 35 to 45 pound range.
Because the harder it is to get on, the more it's going to stay.
Exactly right. And
that makes sense.
Like we were talking about the thicker beaded and tilting back and forth, really those guys, the only thing they can do is to lay that wheel up on its where it can roll across the floor and get a chisel and put a big old ditch down the middle of that safety bead bump. So when that tire goes back up over that ditch they just dug in that safety bead will kind of seat in that tire, let it not pivot back so much to where it bleeps the air. It'll still going to move a little bit, but it's not going to bleep that air. And that's worked better than the Gorilla Snot glue, I don't know. They put all kinds of stuff on there to try to tighten that up. And what you don't realize is that from one tire manufacturer to another tire manufacturer, they all have their own ideas of where they want that tire to be in the plus or minus.
Right.
So some tires fit looser than other tires. And so you get into a whole array of things. And for like a bead collet company, it has been a struggle to try to make a wheel that kind of fits everything.
That makes sense.
Back to thinking about these spacers and the thicker beaded tires, we developed an 1/8 inch spacer. And through messing with a whole bunch of tires, the 1/8 inch seemed to be the thickness that if you could stack it up, you could match everything. And so with the spacers, the reason the spacers came into effect is because, like I was talking earlier, when JK's coming on the market, everybody had to put beadlocks on their Jeep. Mm. So now all those little details that never, ever surfaced when we were only running 18 PSI in the woods is now showing up. Yeah. It's like when I was talking about the undulating. So now you take that outer ring and it's suspended over the bead of this rubber tire and with no support on that ring. So now it's even undulating more. And now we've got the air pressure up to 30, 35 PSI, so we can run 70 miles down the freeway. And it's just sitting there undulating. Every time that load of that vehicle weight comes onto that tire and wheel assembly, it undulates.
Yep.
And that work hardens the head of the bolt saw. So it really starts showing up. And so we quickly developed a spacer
to fill that void.
And so now the idea of the ring can support down onto that spacer, and now that undulation is cut 50, 60%.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And so at that air pressure up there, now we can survive, the bolts will actually survive running down the highway.
Running down the highway. That's right. Awesome.
I still recommend that anytime you change tires, you change the bolts. It's cheap insurance.
Yeah.
Why would you be short on something that's going to leave you in the woods or out in the desert over $6 worth of bolts? Replace all the bolts every time. And if you run the same tires till, I change mine out every couple of years. Mm-hmm. Even if the things sit in the daggum garage, I still every couple of years. Yeah, absolutely. Go to our accessory on Raceline Wheels, and we build a bolt that's called a captive washer bolt. is something we designed years ago in dirt track racing because we were changing tires all the time and you lose that washer.
Sure. Yep. So you have that.
So I built a
captive
captive washer bolt so you don't have to worry about the washers coming off.
Yeah, we
that's
have
nice.
those in the Lexus dealership. That it's kind of cool that it does that.
Yeah.
So, well, that's awesome. So you talked a little bit. Is that the maintenance you're talking about? You were saying these tires. You'd mentioned it to me before we started the show that, since beadlocks are a system, that they do require some maintenance, and people don't do that, and then they pay the price.
It's not a difficult performance package to maintain, but for me, the rule of thumb, anytime I put fuel in that Jeep, while that nozzle's in there pumping gas, I walk around the Jeep, I kick the exhaust pipe, I kick the bumpers, I kick everything. Because that's your one chance to check everything. Just get in a habit. You ain't doing nothing else while it's pumping gas.
See if you have any missing bolt heads.
And then you go, and what I look for on the wheels, I don't like to look for missing bolt heads. I like to catch it before that, but I'll look for a loose washer.
Gotcha. Which means
Or-
it's loosening.
Or if I come out in the morning and I notice I got low air pressure in one of my tires, now I know there's something going on. So then I get your spray bottle up, air the tires up, figure out what it is, what's leaking. That's when I do maintenance, is when there's air leaking out of it or I'm at the gas station. It's two simple things.
You're talking about walking around kicking the Jeep when you get gas. That's me every 2 days. I'd have one sore foot.
You must burn a lot of gas.
I'm doing 100 miles every 2 days.
Oh, man, a Jeep?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, you must really like
you
it.
need to go to the Louisville Slugger factory,
Get a tire thumper.
and get one of their little demo baseball bats that they make and sell, and you can use that as a tire thumper and save your foot.
Scott, why are you limping? Got gas. Wait a minute. Can we strike that?
So now, your wheels, are they clear coated, anodized? What's the general
Well,
finishes, or are they vary?
The beadlocks are mostly raw.
Okay.
Now we start out with a raw wheel, and it stains, of course, because it's raw. So
Right.
it does require that kind of maintenance. And WD-40 is the best. Just spray it on the rag and wipe the wheel off. It'll look new. I don't
Okay.
care what wheel you got. Even if it's an old black painted wheel, you put WD-40 and it'll look brand new again. I see you smiling over there.
Yeah, water displacer 40.
So,
It's
that's
much
the
easier to
easiest
clean
way.
later,
And then,
too, like-
we've gotten into this age where, everybody's color coding everything. So we kind of invested in some of the prismatic powder coat system with our powder coater so
Right.
that we got the price where the guys can afford to do these translucent powder coats. And so to kind of help with the staining, we ended up painting most of the wheels black and the machining the face off.
Okay.
So you have that nice look, and then we put a diamond cut in our wheels. We have for years.
Oh,
and
sweet.
That diamond cut reflects light. I don't care how dirty it is.
Yep.
So it'll show up in your photograph. I don't care how dirty it is.
Sweet.
And so with that, with the black on there, we use a high heat paint. And so that underneath the powder coat, it won't melt. And so you can get a translucent colored wheel that has two-tone.
That's cool.
Looks really
That's
great.
nice.
Check them out on our website. They really look cool. It's an addition that a lot of people are going after nowadays because, well, wheels is still the number one add-on thing.
Yeah.
Even despite COVID, even despite all the stuff, that's one thing about the off-road industry. It is so strong that most people survive the COVID thing very well. Even though we had to operate from our homes most of the
Yeah.
time, we all did well. And we're all, like to say, the Jeep Beach was off the hook. I can't wait. We have Panama City next week with Jeep Jam.
That's cool. That's a cool event.
So
I've been to
we'll
that.
see how things are getting going on. I mean, I just came from the West Coast a little over a month ago, and it's I'm glad I'm back here.
It's nice on the East Coast.
It's nice weather, but it's a lot more political out there. Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it's here too, but it's a little different political atmosphere. Governor DeSantis, putting down his foot on the whole COVID masks and the fact that we had such a smattering of this county said that county said this says that says that. He's like, no, we're going to stick with one Florida. We're all one bunch of old retirees down here and playing in the sun, if you want to call it that way, or
Snowbirds.
spring breakers, or. But
It's the classic, don't make me pull this state over, kids.
yeah.
But I know what you are talking about. My sister and brother spent many, many years in the land of fruits and nuts,
Yep.
in the granola state. I
My
love it
home's
dearly.
Arkansas.
Huh?
My home is Arkansas.
Oh, okay.
That's where I've been, and now through all this stuff, I've been able to work from there enough and travel out of there that I don't have to go back out to the West Coast as much.
Sweet.
And like I say, I'm back here. We're trying to develop the market back here to put warehouses in so the customers have an easier way of getting our wheels.
Yeah,
That's
well,
always a plus.
we laugh because I poke at California. Please don't take offense at it because
Oh, yeah.
we're also we're
mountains
called
and stuff
Florida
are
for a
beautiful.
reason too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you get up there in the
Right?
Sierras out there. You get out away from everybody and get out in the Sierra.
Oh.
God, it's so beautiful wheeling out there.
People are nice out there.
it
too.
is. It is.
Stay out of the city.
I just stay out of the big cities, but
No.
that
Exactly.
applies here. Downtown Orlando,
Exactly like here.
downtown Miami. Something about humanity when we're spread thin, we're wonderful. When we're densed up, we start to get obnoxious, and I don't understand it.
Jealous.
You take that back.
We
Sorry.
just need our own space.
Let's just go get out on the trail and get 6 feet between our Jeeps, and we'll
Yeah.
be fine.
And just please catch the parts that fall off mine.
Yeah,
So you want to lead this time?
yard sale.
No.
See, he keeps doing that. Pick up my parts, but I have to lead.
Yard
So I have to be trail lead, but he still wants me to go clean up.
Yeah,
for
you're
him.
right. I can't do that because I'm usually tailing Charlie, so I have to pick up my own parts.
You do. We'll have to put you one of the little bags we put behind horses. I can pick up the pieces.
Okay.
Well, Greg, anything else you want to add about it?
Well, Raceline, we get out, we go to all the shows. If you see us at the shows, come up, talk to us. For sure,
Yes,
go to
come see us at
Raceline
the
Wheels.
Jeep Jam.
Yeah.
Come see us in the booth. Come
Yeah,
talk to
we'll be there all
us.
week. And then, racelinewheels.com, and they have the little cool thing on the front page called the auto configurer. Mm-hmm. And you stick your
Yes.
rig up on there, and you can play with the wheels. And
You actually see your vehicle, your make,
Oh, you
model,
upload a photo?
color.
yeah.
No, they have the
No.
video there.
Oh, you pick your.
Yeah, you just-
You pick your color,
So-
and then if
Color.
you want 17, you got to
white
bring all the
Chevy.
17. You can slide them up there until you find the one you want.
Oh, we'll have to play with that.
I have one of those at work. Yes, and I have been doing it too.
Looking how the Glad looks on different rims.
I gave Dory my login so she can do it too.
Oh, joy.
And by the way, they on our site right now, one of the first times they've ever done it is Raceline has actually got the bead locks. You can actually go on our website and purchase them right now. I think it's a 15% discount.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that online. So check it out, folks.
And
that's
that's-
racelinewheels.com.
And just for the 15%, this is currently with a date of 2021 May 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm actually required by YouTube to make the statement that Raceline is not a sponsor of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. They're a friend of the show, but they're not a sponsor, and that's okay too.
Right.
I do have a quick question though, because I know you guys are going to Jeep Jam. That's a fun event. So when are we going to see your Jeep out on the trail and out there, giving it what for with the skinny pedal and the yeehaw moments?
Well, let's set a date. I don't know. We
Well,
can
no,
do
we,
a little something
you
before I
but
leave
you
the
go
East Coast.
places that
Yeah.
there's a little more yeehaw than we can get to because somebody still has a job.
There's
Wow.
a few local places
Ouch.
I could show you.
Yeah, because most of the places here in Central Florida are a little bit
Flat.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and we have but one dirt type.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sand.
Crush
but-
sale.
Bad words.
We went, and I don't know if you checked it out. This is kind of funny. If you're ever there back over around Daytona or Flagler Beach, if you go up that far, just north of there's a, what was it, Washington Oaks State Park off of A1A.
Yeah.
And there's a thing called the Rocks. And you can actually go see a rock in Florida. A Florida rock. It's actually a part of a reef
was gonna say
that the
coral.
shore has come over.
Yeah.
It's actually coquina,
Coquina.
which is under coral. It's the old coral as the reef builds. And took Scott and Dory there when we were at Jeep Beach, and it was hilarious because Dory freaked out because they're scuba divers.
Yeah.
She's like, "Oh my God, it's like scuba diving a reef, but I'm walking on it."
Yeah, pretty much.
Now, it's all of about 200 feet long, 75 feet wide, but it's a rock in Florida.
That's a nice perspective, though.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
I plan on hitting the trails as soon as possible. We are going to be taking the Jeep to the West Coast.
gotcha.
We have a few great events out there. Crawl America is going to be doing one in San Hollow coming up in about July.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Darb will appreciate that little push, but it's a good event, and that'll also be televised and stuff. So
Cool.
people at home can kind of get a little piece of the off-road life.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And,
Well, that's
and I plan
awesome.
on trying to video a lot more this year.
Yeah,
We
we,
have to figure out how to actually get my Jeep in the video when I'm busy wheeling.
yeah, that's always a challenge. We can talk about that. As you've seen the ones, I still think my favorite one is, Scott, where we had the split view camera on the Pine
Yeah.
Tree Trail. And
Poor Scott. He's suffering over there right now.
No, I just say, we'll fashion a
red.
selfie
Oh my
stick.
gosh.
We'll fashion a selfie stick that attaches to the sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you remember the one guy we saw about 4 years ago who had a stinger that went out, I'm not exaggerating, 12 feet off the front of his bumper. He'd welded it up out of electrical tubing. And he says, it's not really a stinger. It's a camera mount.
Yeah.
And it actually did some really neat views. And I said, dude, you need to work in Hollywood if you've ever seen one of their camera cars.
The gimbals.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, be careful with the selfie stick in the Jeep, because a few years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, there was actually a gentleman out here in Florida doing the. He had a selfie stick out the window,
Hit a
and he's
tree.
looking at it. No, he had the canoe on the top of his Jeep, and he hit the truck in front of him.
Oh, no.
That was stopped.
Tailgate out.
Yeah, and he literally videoed himself rear-ending somebody. So, and this was like on an embankment. What do you call it? The breaks, the water that holds water in there.
a dike or a revetment or
something like that. Yeah, he
yes.
was right. It was in South Florida near the Everglades, and then he was driving along that, going, "Hey, bang!" It's like, oh man, poor guy. Of course, he uploaded the video.
So, well, anyway, Greg, Stacy, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you taking the time to come out and be on the show with us here.
good times.
We had a great time. It was a lot of fun. I hope your shows and events go really well for you, and
Yes,
that you
please come
guys,
see us. Come say hi.
go say hi. You know, you cannot miss Stacy's JKU.
Oh, yeah.
On 43s. It's a big white. I don't know if you'll still have your aluminum trail doors on a white JKU.
Probably. Yeah, like
And then
those on.
you have to go find her little, portable pet,
Lilo.
Lilo, and say hi.
She's on her
So
pet
they're
bed
on
over
the
there.
pillow.
She's over there. And check out Greg if you have any questions, technical usage, maintenance, on the Raceline product line. And I'm going to say product line because it's a lot more than just the beadlocks.
Yep.
Go see Greg. They have a great display. He's got great information. He can help you out making those bench builds all the way up to buying a set of
you
rims
bet.
and tires.
You bet.
Absolutely. Feel free to reach out and ask me about Metal Cloak, Interco Tire,
Raceline.
Armando with Artec,
Yeah.
and PSC. Like we learned a lot during the build. We learned a lot as far as how well the companies work with us, us not understanding how to put parts on an already beat up Jeep.
Yep. Yep. And the teaser and sorry to the to my Facebook viewers, we will cover the project at hand on the next show since this one ran a little bit long, but just as a teaser to you, since I know I talked with David a little bit back in the audience, we just did another V8 swap this week. We put
He's grinning. He
an
wants
LM7
his change
with
so
a
bad.
4L60E into a 95 YJ. And that in itself isn't all that unusual, but what was fun was the entire instrument cluster and dash cluster of Jeep gauges are functioning and reporting on a 2003 LM7.
Crazy.
So that is a wild build. It's a lot of fun. It's probably getting its lift on the Jeep right now. Today,
Is it at Ron?
it's at
Red
Ron's.
Scorpion.
Red
Red
Scorpion.
Scorpion.
So more for our listeners later. We'll try and get that into the next show. But this one was more fun and more important, and we had to catch Greg while he was over here on this side of the coast before he starts working his way show to show back to the west.
Yep.
And
And for us, just info at Raceline Wheels. You can reach me through there. Just go to info@racelineWheels.com.
okay.
Sweet.
Well, folks, as we always say, I think we've done it well enough. It's time to lock up, put the Jeep in 4-low, and go find some trails.
And
There we
also don't forget to take nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash when you leave.
Right. Wheel legal, tread lightly,
And the words I was just supposed to say.
and we will see you again on the next show.
And
Dirty side down.
Dirty.
Dirty. Well, my Jeep's equally dirty on both sides, so that kind of. But anyway,
The T-shirt at Jeep Beach was still funny. It was all printed upside down. It says, "But is my Jeep okay?" All right. Well, on that,
bye, folks.
bye.
Hey, guys.
Bye, Patreon.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.